Enjoy your time here and find peace in the stories we tell. If you liked the story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to support the channel. My dear wife, this is the nourishing soup I had the servants prepare especially for you. Please, drink it while it is still warm. Sebastian Wen held the fragrant chicken soup, his long, slender fingers curled around the bowl. His expression was as gentle as a spring breeze as he smiled softly. You have worked so hard managing the household, my lady. You must replenish your strength. I looked up at him. Red lips, white teeth, handsome and refined, filled with the aura of a scholar, exactly as he was on the day I first met him. I accepted the bowl of soup and casually placed it to the side. The smile on his lips faltered, and his voice held a trace of grievance. My dear wife, why do you not drink it while it's hot? This soup was simmered for hours over a low fire. It is incredibly nourishing. I lifted the bowl, stirring the contents gently with a spoon as the aroma filled the room. Then, I scooped up a spoonful and held it to his lips. My dear husband, you work so hard with your studies. You are the one who truly needs this. Master Wen, open your mouth, let your wife serve you. Sebastian Wen stiffened, quickly pushing my hand back toward me. My lady, I had this soup specially prepared for you. It contains medicinal herbs intended only for women. A man should not consume it. I raised an eyebrow and smiled sweetly, my heart seemingly overflowing with emotion. My face radiant, I lifted the spoon and drank the soup, one sip or another, until the bowl was empty. When he saw I had finished it all, Sebastian let out a faint, almost imperceptible sigh, a complex emotion fleeting across his eyes. He then said he had an engagement with friends and hurried away. The moment he was gone, my maid, Daisy, entered and whispered, "Milady, it has been confirmed. The soup contained wilted rose powder. I have already arranged for that specific bowl to be served to old Madame Wen. Wilted rose powder. It is colorless and odorless. Anyone who consumes it will wither away like a dying flower, growing weaker day by day until they return to the dust." Naturally, the bowl I drank was not the poisoned one. This entire estate, from the highest servant to the lowest, belongs to me. If Sebastian thinks he can secretly take my life, it will not be so easy. In public, I remain the virtuous and demure young mistress, the one who holds the managerial power of the Wen estate. My name is Genevieve Li. My mother, Victoria Li, is the sole heiress to the Li family, the wealthiest merchant household in the capital. My father married into her family. My mother bore only one child, me. When I was married to Sebastian, my dowry was so vast it nearly emptied the Li family's treasury. The dowry procession was endless. The first carts arrived at the Wen manor while the last carts had not yet departed my own home. It was a spectacle that left everyone in awe. Because I was the only daughter, one of my father's concubines managed to give birth to a son and, believing this secured her position, grew arrogant, stirring up trouble in our household time and again, only to be firmly suppressed by my mother every time. From a young age my mother raised me as if I were a son. She always said, "To have only money but no cunning is to be no different than a child clutching gold in a crowded, dangerous market." She taught me that in public I must always feign weakness, lest anyone discover my true nature. And so I have kept up that pretense for 21 years. I married Sebastian for one reason and one reason only: I coveted his beautiful face. One day, I heard Daisy mention that the local bookstore had received a new shipment of manuscripts, so I went to take a look. Usually, aside from helping my mother manage the family enterprises, my greatest pleasure is reading popular manuscripts. I do not favor any particular genre. I read whatever catches my eye. From the romantic exploits of scholars and the righteous deeds of wandering heroes, to travel journals and records of local customs, I devour them all. I even enjoy reading culinary recipes and medicinal tonics. I read those last two simply because I am a glutton. As a child, I once fell ill and stubbornly refused to drink my bitter medicine. The family physician had no choice but to prepare a medicinal broth that was both delicious and cured my illness. From that moment, I developed a keen interest in medicinal cuisine. My mother worried that my reputation as a young lady would be ruined if my gluttonous habits became public. Therefore, aside from the wet nurse who raised me, only my two personal maids, Daisy and Holly, know that I understand the art of medicinal cuisine like the back of my hand. To the rest of the world, I am merely the sole heiress of the Li merchant family, doted upon endlessly, and as frail and delicate as a willow branch swaying in the wind. I hold no title like First Beauty of the Capital, nor am I associated with the kind of beauty that could overthrow nations. My mother often taught me, For a merchant family, to be wealthy is one thing, but to be too famous is not necessarily good. In the eyes of the nobility, we are seen as nothing more than a fat, juicy prize waiting to be devoured. That was the day I happened upon Sebastian at the bookstore. Even though he wore a faded gray robe, he could not conceal his elegant and scholarly demeanor. He was holding a freshly transcribed manuscript in both hands, presenting it to the clerk. He received 200 copper coins from the shopkeeper and immediately accepted a new volume to transcribe. The text he was copying was a rare travel journal, not some ancient classic by a famous master, but simply a collection of notes on local customs. At that moment I was idle, having no new manuscript to read. The instant I glimpsed that travelogue, my interest was piqued. I asked the shopkeeper to bring it to me for a look. The shopkeeper recognized me at once and bowed deeply, presenting the book with both hands in a very respectful manner. I flipped through a few pages. The journal was fascinating, but the original copy was in poor condition, damp, mildewed, and moth-eaten. Several pages were stuck fast together, making it incredibly difficult to read. Sebastian must have seen me frowning, for he quickly stepped forward and bowed politely. "Miss, if you would allow me 3 days, I will transcribe a brand new copy for you. Would you perhaps be willing to return then to read it?" His words were gentle, his posture proper, and his bearing as refined as jade. I smiled softly and replied, "Very well." He looked as though a heavy burden had been lifted, his expression visibly relaxing. He gathered the book, preparing to leave. I immediately instructed Daisy to take out 50 silver taels and give them to him. "Young master, please use the finest mulberry paper for this copy, and it must be He Province ink. Whatever silver remains, please accept it as a token of my gratitude for your efforts." Sebastian's eyes widened, his composure faltering for a moment as he quickly glanced toward the shopkeeper. The shopkeeper smiled. "Master Wen, this young lady is the daughter of our proprietor. You need only complete the transcription as soon as possible and deliver it." Sebastian's hands trembled slightly. He looked at me for a long moment, visibly moved, before bowing deeply. He then bowed to the shopkeeper, gathered the book, and walked away, his steps light and full of cheerful energy. True to his word, on the 3rd day, I received the completed, hand-copied journal. It smelled faintly of fresh ink, and the calligraphy was neat and pleasing to the eye. All the pages that had been stuck together and the content obscured by moth-eaten holes had been fully restored. Judging by the narrative flow and the coherence of the restored sections, he must have diligently researched other sources to fill in the missing text. It was not a careless or superficial effort. The 50 silver taels were well spent. Some time later, on a clear, sunny day, Daisy and Holly were airing out the books from my study. As they worked, they listened to me recount the contents of the travel journal. Daisy remarked with feeling, "It's no wonder people say a scholar can know the world without ever stepping outside his door. Books truly do contain everything." Holly giggled. "Milady, you read so much, I fear even becoming the top scholar in the imperial examinations wouldn't be difficult for you." I laughed and playfully scolded her. If I ever entered the examination hall, I wouldn't know whether to write a romantic tale for the examiners or 108 ways to cook medicinal broth. The 3 of us broke into laughter, the sound echoing through the study. Right at that moment, my mother sent a servant with a message. A matchmaker had arrived with a marriage proposal, and she wanted me to come and take a look. The suitor was none other than Sebastian. He had come with the official matchmaker, his widowed mother, and his younger sister. The gifts he brought were a painting he had done himself, along with sweet osmanthus cakes and tea pastries, and his mother had personally baked. The painting was a portrait of me from that day in the bookstore, holding the old travel journal and reading with rapt attention. In the painting, I had willow leaf eyebrows and eyes like autumn water, my expression serene, my gaze fixed completely on the yellowed pages. Outside the shop, cicadas hummed, while the scent of ink inside seemed to separate the shop from the bustling, noisy world beyond. The painting was clearly made with great care and intention. My mother, who knew full well how I lose myself whenever I'm reading a manuscript, shot a knowing glance in my direction. I was hiding behind a decorative screen, where I stuck out my tongue and made a playful face at her. My mother did not immediately refuse the marriage proposal, stating only that she needed to consider it carefully. My father, Richard Lee, on the other hand, readily nodded in approval. He said that although Sebastian was poor, he had earned the rank of scholar at 17, and had a promising future. Furthermore, the Wen family household was small and uncomplicated. He added that since my, Genevieve's, appearance was only average and my intelligence unremarkable. It was a fitting match. The Lee family has no shortage of gold, he argued, we only lack a powerful connection. If Sebastian passes the higher examinations and becomes an official, his career path will be wide open. A girl from a merchant family would normally have no chance of becoming the main wife in an official's household. He said I would be lucky if I wasn't rejected as even a concubine for being too lowly. The moment those words left my father's mouth, he received a sharp slap across the face from my mother. After striking him, she turned and asked me what I thought. I considered it for a moment. The flicker of desire I felt for Sebastian's handsome face was instantly extinguished by the fear of my mother's palm. I obediently replied, "Your daughter will abide by whatever father and mother decide." My father clutched his cheek, shooting a resentful glance at my mother. My mother considered the proposal for several days, and when the matchmaker returned to inquire, she finally nodded her assent to the marriage. On the third day after our wedding, my mother-in-law, old Madame Wen, began to hint that my husband still needed to take the upcoming examinations, telling me to encourage him to focus on his studies. I did not dare delay. I immediately hired renowned tutors, sourced rare books, gathered collections of prized essays, and even researched the personal tastes and stylistic preferences of the chief examiners, down to memorizing their personal taboos. All that hard work paid off. At the age of 23, Sebastian passed the final imperial examination. He ranked 99th in the second-tier candidates. While not as glorious as the top 3 scholars, he was young and exceptionally handsome, which caused the hearts of many young ladies to flutter. When it came time for his official appointment, he was assigned directly to the Ministry of Rights, holding the position of an associate official of the 5th rank. From that day forward, old Madame Wen began to express her dissatisfaction with me. Sometimes openly, sometimes through veiled comments. In 6 years of marriage, I had given birth to fraternal twins, but after that, there were no more happy tidings. Taking matters into her own hands, my mother-in-law forced 2 concubines upon him. One was a distant female cousin, Lola Lu, and the other her own personal maid Amber. She even boldly declared, whichever of them bears a son first will be elevated to the status of honored concubine. Sebastian initially chided his mother for her presumptuousness. He came before me to apologize, swearing that he had no desire to take concubines and wished only to live a peaceful life with me. But this mother-in-law, the same woman who once called me her dear daughter, had been corrupted by her new wealth and status. She now openly cursed me as a jealous shrew and even tried to pressure Sebastian to divorce me. Left with no alternative, Sebastian reluctantly accepted the 2 women as his concubines and grudgingly fulfilled his duties with them. It wasn't long before Lola Lu became pregnant. Old Madame Wen was ecstatic. She immediately opened her private treasury, and rewards flowed like water, filling the courtyard with precious gifts. That treasury, of course, had originally been part of my dowry. Fortunately, the matter of elevating her to honored concubine never came to pass. Sebastian himself stepped in and forbade it. But someone with a loose tongue let word of this reach Lola Lu. From that day on, she viewed me as the person who had personally destroyed her grand future. Every time she looked at me, her gaze was so hateful it felt as if she wanted to tear me into 1,000 pieces. Then, misfortune struck. One day, while visiting old Madame Wen to pay her respects, Lola Lu accidentally slipped and fell. The fetus in her belly, not yet fully formed, was immediately lost. That marked the first major fight Sebastian and I ever had. Lola Lu cried and screamed, accusing me of murdering the Wen family's heir, and Sebastian actually believed her. Yet, not long after this, Sebastian began acting as if nothing had ever happened. He would join me for breakfast in the morning and even offered to paint my eyebrows, speaking sweetly, just as he had during our newlywed days. He would hold me by the shoulders as we gazed into the bronze mirror, reflecting the perfect image of a loving husband and wife. He was handsome, I was gentle, we were no different from the male and female protagonists of a romantic manuscript. Over the past 6 years, my study had become filled with manuscripts that Sebastian himself had painstakingly tracked down for me, perhaps because he was such a passionate scholar. The tales he selected were almost always sentimental love stories. A beautiful young miss falls for a talented, poor scholar. After they marry, she is perfectly filial to his parents, in-law, adores his younger sister, treats his concubines with grace, teaches her children etiquette, cooks for the family, and uses her own dowry to help her husband climb the ladder of success. Her husband, having achieved greatness, then petitions the emperor for a noble title for her, and their story becomes a legend. Whenever I became engrossed in such a passage, Sebastian would lean close to my ear and whisper teasingly, "My dear wife, are we not just like the characters in this story?" His warm breath on the nape of my neck would send a shiver through me. In the beginning, I would blush and lean into his embrace, my heart filled with sweetness. That lasted until the day he took that concubine to his bed. I slammed my hand on the table. Damn it, I had almost been completely fooled by that two-faced, pretty, boy scholar. Holly quickly shut the door to the room and whispered, "Milady, you must be patient. Do not reveal any flaws in your facade." Daisy, her eyes wide, simply asked, "Is it time to initiate Plan B, Milady?" In the following days I continued to eat well, dress beautifully, and leisurely read my manuscripts. When I had spare time, I went out to inspect my properties. My dowry included numerous shops, and every year I set aside a full month to conduct inspections. Even then, I had to ride hard from one to the next, leaving me utterly exhausted. But who could I blame? The chief steward my mother left for me was far too capable and shrewd. He made the businesses multiply, like chickens laying eggs, and those eggs hatching more chickens. New shops opened one after another, and the silver piled up like a snowball rolling downhill, growing larger and larger. When one has silver, all matters become simple. One day, I was dining in the most exclusive, private room of my restaurant. A room were open to unfamiliar guests. From there, I saw Sebastian and my own father, Richard, walking one behind the other, respectfully escorting a foppish, aristocratic-looking young master from another room. Afterward, my father and husband returned to their room and only emerged half an hour later. What they didn't know was that this very restaurant was also one of my properties. Such secretive behavior meant there was certainly a hidden plot. I immediately and quietly mobilized my people, assigning a team to monitor my father. Ever since I had married into the family, old Madame Wen had used the excuse that the Wens were a family of scholars and should not be ostentatious or wasteful. She insisted that 2 or 3 servants were perfectly sufficient and demanded that I dismiss the entire retinue of maids and footmen I had brought with me from my mother's home. Not long after that, one night, the old Madame was wandering in a half-asleep daze, tripped over the hem of her own robe, and took a hard fall. After that, she began complaining that the old serving women in her chambers were aged and weak, no longer of any use. She mumbled that she needed to purchase a few new, more capable servants. The truth was, the 50 servants who had been brought into the estate on that occasion had all been personally selected by old Madame Wen herself. She held all their indentured contracts in her hand. What she didn't know, however, was that this group of people had actually been carefully chosen for her, long in advance, by my mother. I held my teacup, laughing so hard my shoulders shook. My mother, exasperated, poked my forehead and scolded me gently. "You girl, you need to be less complacent and learn to be more cautious." I whined playfully. "As long as mother is here, it doesn't matter whether your daughter is careful or not." Old Madame Wen had no idea that even the very manor we were living in had passed through countless intermediaries, all controlled by my mother, before finally being sold to Sebastian. And it wasn't just this house, the mansions on either side of us also belonged to the Lee family. My mother always said that marriage is just like a business partnership. You cannot judge it by the profits of the first 2 or 3 years, you must have a long-term vision. The best outcome is a win-win for both parties. But if one side decides to betray the other, then the other party must possess the ability to retreat completely unharmed. You must never have the heart to harm others, but you absolutely cannot lack the heart to guard against them. If the conditions for defense don't exist, you must create them. Furthermore, the Lee family's enterprise is massive. My mother, despite being a woman, has managed to stand firm in this treacherous capital, surrounded by wolves disguised as nobility. Her ability to thrive to this day is thanks to her strategy, her methods, her fortune, and her resources. Lacking even one of those, she would have failed. I just never expected that Sebastian would be so impatient. It seems I overestimated him. After returning from my long tour of the shops, I was exhausted. I had just planned to rest for a few days when old Madame Wen suddenly fell ill and sent a servant to summon me to her bedside. Having been pampered in luxury for 6 years, she now looked so young that if she stood side by side with Sebastian, some might even believe they were sister and brother, not mother and son. All traces of her past hardships and poverty had vanished. She was reclining against the headboard, her complexion as rosy as a budding flower, her 10 fingers long and delicate, her skin as smooth as jade. Cough, cough, cough. She covered her mouth with a silk handkerchief, letting out a few faint coughs, sounding as frail as if she were at death's door. You come to visit the sick empty-handed. What is the meaning of this? My mother is ill. You should be attending to her day and night. My sister-in-law, Cecilia Wen, glared at me fiercely. What kind of daughter-in-law behaves as you do? I gazed at this young woman. I remembered her as a sallow, timid girl with dry hair and ashen skin. Now, her cheeks were rosy, her hair was smooth as silk, her eyes shone brightly, and she radiated vigorous health. Standing there, she looked like a vibrant, blooming flower. And all of that transformation was achieved because I had spent money like water, nourishing her with precious medicinal foods for 6 long years. Thinking back on all that silver, I felt it would have been less painful to just throw it into a lake. At least then I would have heard a splash. Investing it in them only served to feed their ambitions. I bowed my head slightly, my voice gentle. Mother is unwell. As a daughter-in-law, it is my natural duty to attend to you day and night. I paused, then continued evenly. However, the 2 attendants in Mother's chambers, Nurse Zhang and Nurse Hu, are getting on in years. Their health is declining. Perhaps it would be best for them to leave the estate and retire peacefully. Old Madame Wen sat bolt upright, pointing a finger at me, her lips trembling as she said, Genevieve, I only have 2 confidantes by my side to serve and entertain me, yet you cannot even tolerate them. I widened my eyes, feigning ignorance, and replied, Mother, your daughter-in-law only pitied their old age and frailty, fearing they could not handle the work of serving you, so I intended to let them rest. Who would have thought that from Mother's mouth, it would turn into me not being able to tolerate people? Moreover, now that you are ill, is it not because they failed to care for you properly that your condition has worsened? Old Madame Wen was so furious that the blood rushed to her head. She grabbed the teacup by the bedside and threw it right at my feet. She shouted angrily, Kneel down. Kneeling is out of the question. I pulled over a chair and sat down boldly, speaking calmly, Mother, if you have any dissatisfaction with your daughter-in-law, just say it straight. Is there any need to put on this act? You eat my food, use my things, try to poison me, and now you plan to torment me. Since you wanted to use illness as an excuse to order me around, then you should be truly sick. Genevieve, you dare to make my mother angry. I will tell my brother to divorce you. That shrill shrew, Cecilia screamed, raising her hand to slap me. I did not even bother to move. Holly simply lifted her leg gently and kicked her to the ground. Old Madame Wen was so furious she slapped the edge of the bed, howling. Rebellion, this is rebellion. Genevieve, you are a vicious, unfilial daughter-in-law. You dare to be rude to your elders and even hit your sister-in-law. I must have Sebastian divorce you. Mother. Cecilia sat heavily on the floor, tears in her eyes, screaming, Someone, come quickly and arrest this vicious woman Genevieve for me. Call the 2 nurses, Zhang and Hu. The nurses rolled up their sleeves and advanced. I simply rested my cheek on my hand, the corners of my lips lifting slightly, staring intently at my newly painted fingernails. The color was truly vibrant. I wondered if it was redder than fresh blood. Behind me, there were sounds of struggling, muffled cries, and the cracking of whips until everything fell into silence. Daisy's clear voice rang out. Milady, those 2 treacherous old dogs have stopped breathing. I waved my sleeve lightly. Throw them into the mass grave for the dogs to eat. Sell their families off. I hate ingrates the most. No matter how much you feed them, they never become loyal. Old Madame Wen and Cecilia's faces were drained of blood. They hugged each other, trembling, looking at me with eyes filled with terror. Scared by just that. This is only the opening act. I stood up and walked step by step toward them. Old Madame Wen shrieked, Do not come here. Don't come over. Ah, stay away. Don't come near. Cecilia screamed, flailing her arms and legs like a madwoman, terrified out of her wits. I tilted my head, revealing a look of grievance. Mother is ill, so the daughter-in-law must serve her. How could I not? Daisy, bring the bedding. I will sleep here tonight. Before Daisy could speak, old Madame Wen hurriedly shouted. I am cured. I do not need you to serve me. I feigned surprise. Mother, just a moment ago I heard you coughing ceaselessly. It pained your daughter-in-law's heart so much I wished to bear the illness for you. What magic medicine did you take to recover so quickly? Old Madame Wen's face turned red then green. She staggered a few times and fainted. Mother, wake up. Cecilia turned to look at me, then at the bloodstains scattered on the ground, rolled her eyes back, and fainted as well. Tisk. I shook my head, full of boredom, stood up, and gave orders. Move the 2 of them to Luo He courtyard. Say that the old madame and the young miss have contracted smallpox. Assign a few servants to attend to them, but forbid anyone else from coming or going from Luo He courtyard. I wanted to see if my good husband would care to visit when he heard his own mother and sister had smallpox. I led Daisy and Holly slowly back toward my own small courtyard. From a distance, I saw a figure standing guard at the gate. As soon as she saw me, she ran over on all fours. "Young madam." The person bowed. I glanced at her and laughed. It was none other than my husband's concubine. "Amber, what kind of decorum is this, rushing about in such a panic?" I glanced at her, told her to enter, and spoke. As soon as we entered, Daisy immediately closed the gate, and Holly stood guard in the corridor. Amber followed me into the room, and before she could even sit, she spoke urgently. "Milady, the master has colluded with the illegitimate daughter of the Marquise Anne's household. The master wants to marry her as an equal wife." My expression did not change, and I said indifferently, "If he wants to marry, let him marry. What does it matter?" Amber was anxious. "Milady, how can the master marry an equal wife? This is no different than slapping you right in the face. Moreover, the Marquise Anne's household is of noble lineage. If that Tiffany Jung is brought through the door, what standing will you have left in this house?" I looked at Amber. Dressed in pink robes, standing before me with a petite and lovely figure, her charming face clearly showed her anxiety. I casually picked up a jeweled hairpin from the vanity table and pinned it into her hair bun. I took a step back, observed her carefully, then nodded slightly with a smile. "Looking like this is much better. You are starting to look like someone who serves me." A look of joy flashed across Amber's face, her eyes curved and her lips parted in a smile. "That is still best to serve the young madam. There is silver and jewelry. Milady, when will you allow this servant to return to serve you? A's for the master." Speaking of this, she felt a bit shy, biting her lower lip lightly. She hesitated for a long time before lowering her voice. "Milady, you should quickly give birth to another young master. Once you are pregnant, this servant will immediately—" Before she could finish her sentence, her left hand had already secretly reached out, pointing at her own waist and making a pinching motion, as if to say, "At that time, whoever dares to get pregnant, I will deal with them." I was so annoyed I tapped her forehead hard. I scolded her affectionately, "My affairs are not for you to worry about. And with this impulsive, rash personality of yours, I do not understand how you ever caught the old madam's eye." Amber giggled, full of self-satisfaction. "Naturally, it is because the old madam saw that this servant was stupid and easy to order around, thinking I would be easy to manipulate. Actually, in her eyes, I am the stupidest one. But to be honest, isn't the truly stupid one Lola Lu? Every day she twists and poses. If one didn't know better, they would think she was a courtesan from the Spring Fragrance Pavilion. Milady, I simply cannot understand why the master is so obsessed with that sort. She reeks of the countryside, yet dresses like she is in a brothel. She never studied properly, looking like a fox spirit that hasn't finished transforming." She whispered on, "Milady, I heard Lola Lu has a transparent stomacher." Before she could finish, I covered her mouth. With an unchanged expression, I pushed her out the door and said calmly, "Get out." Once she starts running her mouth, listening to it gives me a headache. It is fortunate that I only let her become Sebastian's concubine. If she were a favored consort in the palace, the entire harem would probably be driven mad by her annoyance. What is so terrible about a transparent stomacher? If she likes it, I can even custom order transparent trousers for her to wear. Stop acting like it is strange. After Amber was chased away, I sat down and rubbed my temples. Daisy, suppressing a laugh, brought over some tea. "Milady, drink a sip of tea to soothe yourself." I accepted it. I took a sip, a faint, elegant fragrance spread over the tip of my tongue. A gentle bitterness followed by a hint of refreshing sweetness. "Did father and mother send this?" Daisy nodded. "Yes, Milady. Madame Victoria said that since the tea is old, it should be thrown away. Keeping it makes it undrinkable and it just takes up space." I first nodded, then shook my head. Old tea has the virtues of old tea. Some people actually prefer to drink old tea. Sebastian did not return until 3 days later. As soon as he entered the courtyard, he stormed over in a rage. Before he could even catch his breath, he scolded, "My dear wife, mother and Cecilia were perfectly fine. How could they suddenly contract smallpox? Not only did you fail to care for them, but you also chased them to the Luo He courtyard. What exactly are your intentions?" I stood up, looking at him with aggrieved eyes, and spoke softly. "Husband, what do you mean by these words? Mother and sister-in-law were infected with smallpox. I was afraid the disease would spread throughout the estate, so I had them moved to the secluded Luohe courtyard. Servants have also been fully arranged. You have not been at the estate these past days. I sent people to find you, but heard from the Yemen that you had taken leave. I invited famous doctors from all over the capital, but as soon as they heard it was smallpox, no one dared to come. They only prescribed a few formulas to try. Before I could finish, Sebastian exploded in anger, sweeping the tea set off the table. Genevieve, you are truly a poisonous woman, full of deceitful words. Someone come, bring my visiting card, invite Dr. Winston for me. I remained sitting leisurely, calm and composed. I laughed coldly in my heart. Without my visiting card, let's see if he can invite Dr. Winston. Does he really think an associate official of the 5th rank can summon the #1 physician in the capital? Dr. Winston appears gentle on the surface, but his temperament is eccentric. Outsiders simply cannot invite him. To befriend him, I spent great effort collecting rare medicinal ingredients, gifting him treasured medical texts, and even offering an entire mountain for him to grow herbs. Did Sebastian think the doctor was a watchdog he could just call over? Sure enough, half a day passed before the servant returned sheepishly, his face ashen. Sebastian stuck his head out to look, and seeing no one behind the servant, his face went pale. Where is he? He questioned angrily. The servant lowered his head, trembling as he replied. Reporting to master, Dr. Winston was not at home, he went out to visit friends. Sebastian's eyes turned red. Then did you not know to go invite another famous doctor? The servant bowed his head even lower. Yes, but hearing that the old madame has smallpox, the other doctors did not dare to come to the door, fearing infection. The servant had been fumigated with mugwort smoke 7 or 8 times, no wonder, as he was soaked from the inside out with the stench of lust and rot. At that moment, Sebastian was panting heavily, his nostrils flaring, looking nothing like the gentle, jade man of years past. In that instant, I suddenly felt repulsed. When he used to bring me chicken soup, I thought he was a beautiful, colorful poisonous snake, sticking out its tongue to tease me. I found it rather cute. But now, he was nothing more than an ugly toad, opening his mouth to spit poison at me. Seeing I remained silent, Sebastian suddenly shouted in rage, Genevieve, you are very smug, aren't you? I looked up in surprise. What am I smug about? I already said, in this world, there is no one who can cure smallpox. Actually, I know a folk remedy. It is just that Dr. Winston is still verifying it. Sebastian looked at me with eyes as dark as an abyss. A moment later, appearing to have made up his mind, he flung his sleeves and left. That night, he slept in Lola Lu's courtyard. He did not dare take a single step toward the Luo courtyard to see his mother and sister, knowing they had a dangerous infectious disease. I sat sipping bird's nest soup, the corners of my lips curving slightly. Sebastian, you love yourself far more than you love filial piety. 1 month later, old Madame Wen and Cecilia recovered. The old madame's face was covered in pockmarks, her vision was blurred, and her hearing had deteriorated. As for Cecilia, because she was young and her constitution was stronger, apart from an ugly face and a slightly strange gait, she was not considered crippled. When Sebastian and I entered the courtyard, a pillow flew straight at me. I leaned sideways to dodge, and the pillow smacked directly into Sebastian's face. Cecilia, what are you doing? Sebastian was furious. He snatched the pillow, shoved it into Lola Lu's hands, and stepped forward to look closely, immediately staring in horror. Your faces? My son, finally you have come. That poisonous woman, she wants to kill me and Cecilia. The old madame's eyes could no longer see clearly, so she lunged forward to grab me. I gently dodged, pushing Sebastian forward to take the hit for me. Sebastian hurriedly supported her, while his other arm was grabbed tightly by Cecilia, her sharp fingernails digging into his flesh. Brother, you must seek justice for me and Mother. Genevieve is a vicious slut, she caused Mother and me to end up like this. I widened my eyes, looking aggrieved. Old Madame, sister-in-law, you have no evidence, how can you casually accuse me? Old Madame Wen howled, poisonous woman, I only had a minor illness. I asked you to serve me a little, and you plotted to give Cecilia and me smallpox. Cecilia and I rarely leave the house all year round, how could we suddenly catch such a disease? I replied calmly, that is correct. You stay behind closed doors all year, how could you get infected? I pretended to ponder. A month and a half ago, in the Qingyi district in the southern part of the city, there was a household named Wu. Their son contracted smallpox. The family did not isolate him strictly, and I heard the whole family was infected. It is unknown if they lived or died. Aside from that, I have not heard of anyone in the capital catching the disease. Old madam, sister-in-law, think carefully. Did you have contact with anyone from the Wu family recently? As soon as I finished speaking, Cecilia's body went stiff. She looked up, staring at me with disbelief. The surname is Wu. I heard he is a 20-year-old scholar with a not bad reputation. With smallpox like that, even if he survives, his path in the civil service examinations is over. Cecilia's face turned deathly pale, her body swaying. Her face, covered in bumpy scars, now filled with fear, looked no different from a ghost. I feigned surprise. Could it be that sister-in-law recognizes this scholar Wu? Cecilia snapped back to reality and immediately shook her head like a madwoman. Nonsense. I am an unmarried maiden. How could I know anyone named Wu? Do not try to frame me. I tilted my head and smiled lightly. If you don't know him, you don't know him. Why such panic? If you truly don't know him, why did you both get sick? Cecilia was secretly having an affair with a poor scholar. She was afraid her brother would object, so she went back and forth secretly, never expecting to catch smallpox from him. I didn't even have time to make my move before they got sick first. It really gave me a scare. I had to fumigate myself with medicine countless times. Sebastian watched his sister's expression change. How could he not understand there was a hidden story? Seeing his mother and sister now with such unsightly faces and terrifying appearances, he suddenly felt a wave of disgust. He sighed and turned to me. My dear wife, go back and rest first. I will stay and talk with mother. I was as gentle as water. Yes, my husband. When I walked out of the Luo courtyard with Daisy and Holly, the courtyard door slammed shut with a thud. The corners of my lips curled slightly. Sebastian, you are truly heartless. Now that your mother and sister have faces too ashamed to be seen in public, you didn't even bother to say a word inviting them back to the inner courtyard. Truly a rare model of filial piety. Presumably, after the three of them finished their confrontation, Sebastian, like a rabid dog, stormed straight into my room. The moment he saw my face, he raised his hand to slap me. I leaned aside to dodge. His hand swung through empty air, and he used so much force that his body spun around. He panted heavily, screaming, Genevieve, the two nurses serving mother, you dared to beat them to death right in front of mother and Cecilia. He seemed to choke on his words, taking several deep breaths before shouting again. You are just a merchant's daughter, daring to be infilial and rude. I want to divorce you. I narrowed my eyes, my lips curling slightly. Oh, divorcing me to make room for Tiffany, is it? As for those two old women, did you know husband? Their husbands and sons were drunkards and gamblers who gambled away everything. They stole from my dowry to sell. Initially, I only intended to expel them from the estate, but unexpectedly, they planned to lay hands on me. Do you blame me, husband? Sebastian's expression froze. His mother had never mentioned this. If it leaked out that the old madame's personal servants dared to steal the daughter-in-law's dowry, how would he have the face to face his colleagues? He felt resentful in his heart, blaming his mother for not knowing how to endure and dragging him into the mud. After all, the dowry would sooner or later belong to them anyway. Seeing he remained silent, I continued gently, my dear husband, if you want to marry an equal wife, I will not object. As long as you are happy, and the three of us live harmoniously, that is better than anything. I paused for a moment, then softened my voice further. I am just a merchant's daughter, I do not cling to hierarchy. If Tiffany is willing, it does not matter if she and I are of equal status. It is actually quite funny, after all, it will not be long before I have no need to fight for position with her. Sebastian looked at me as if he had seen a ghost, then frowned with deep suspicion. Genevieve, since when did you become so generous? I giggled coquettishly, stepping forward to lightly punch his chest. My dear husband, of course, it is because since marrying you, I have learned to be tolerant. Meeting you is the greatest luck of my life. I have often thought that I must be dreaming to have met such a good man. Handsome, elegant, and gentle as jade. I heard that Tiffany is not the only one who secretly admires you. I sighed softly, pretending to be sad. You are so handsome. I only wish to hide you away in my boudoir so no one else can see you. Sebastian was teased by me until he took a few steps back, but my words made his heart rejoice as if it were a festival. He smiled lightly. Since you do not mind the hierarchy, then let Tiffany be the wife and you be the concubine. After all, her father is a marquis, it would be truly unsightly for her to be a concubine. Unsightly, yet she still colludes with a married man. A slut meets a dog, heaven made them a pair. I clutched my chest and took a few steps back, acting as if I could not stand steady. Husband, you are an official in the Ministry of Rights. Favoring a concubine and destroying a wife is a major taboo. I do not mind the order of things in our home, but on the outside, your reputation is of the utmost importance. Furthermore, with your talent, the path to the first rank is not far. You must keep your reputation pure as jade. How can you let the censors catch a weakness? These words hit him exactly where it mattered. His expression gradually softened, and he held my hand, his eyes as gentle as water. My wife, you still understand me best. I looked deeply into his eyes and spoke slowly. A woman who marries follows her husband as she follows the heavens. You are my sky. If I do not respect the sky and treat it well, then who else would I treat well? Just then Daisy brought in 2 bowls of tonic soup. Master, madam, is it time for your tonic? I personally lifted a bowl and placed it in front of Sebastian, then picked up my own and sipped it slowly. The soup was clear, the flavor rich, with a sweet aftertaste. Every day I would drink a bowl, rest for a short while, and wake up with a rosy complexion and a refreshed spirit. Sebastian, out of habit, also drank his bowl in one go. Afterward he pulled me into his arms, his breathing heavy. Wife, I am tired. Shall we rest for a while? I leaned against his chest, casting a flirtatious glance, and replied softly, yes, husband, carry me. He bent down, but just as he was about to lift me, a servant boy's voice rang out from outside the door. Master, the young miss of the Jung family has brought her younger brother to visit the old madam. They are waiting in the main hall. Sebastian went stiff, hurriedly stood up straight, and turned to me with an embarrassed look. I sat up slowly, smiling gently. Distinguished guests have arrived. Husband, go and greet them quickly. If I do not leave here now, I fear I might vomit. The news that the old madame and my sister-in-law had contracted smallpox had long since spread throughout the capital, causing quite a stir, everyone knew. Yet Tiffany had never once stepped foot here before, but now that they had just recovered, she rushed over immediately. As the mistress of the house, when a female guest arrives, naturally I should greet her myself. However, that distinguished guest did not present a visiting card, nor did she announce herself to me beforehand. And by nature, I am lazy. I just finished my tonic soup, so naturally, I must take a nap. I instructed Holly to order the servants to the guests well and not to be rude. After a delicious nap, feeling refreshed, I saw Daisy run in panting. Milady, the front courtyard is in chaos. The master and the legitimate daughter of Marquis Anne were sleeping together. The second miss of the Jumley caught them and rushed in to beat both the master and her own sister. Just then, the old madam and the young miss came out to get some fresh air and witnessed the scene. The young miss got angry and pushed the second Miss Jung into the lake. Then the younger brother of the second Miss Jung picked up a rock and smashed the young miss's head. Seeing that, the old madam swung her cane and poked the boy into the lake as well. I stood up abruptly. What did you say? The legitimate daughter of the Marquise Anne, Diana Jung. Why is she also involved in this? After thinking for a moment, I understood. The Marquise Anne has a legitimate daughter, an illegitimate daughter, and an illegitimate son. He holds no real power. The Marquis himself is incompetent, knowing only luxury and debauchery. Aside from his title, he is an empty shell. Originally, he petitioned to have his illegitimate son named the Heir, but the emperor rejected it. Fearing his title would be revoked, he wanted to marry his legitimate daughter to a 60-year-old official as a second wife to gain influence. Diana was desperate, so she proactively entangled herself with Sebastian to push that marriage responsibility onto Tiffany. I thought only the illegitimate daughter entered the fray. I did not expect the legitimate daughter to jump into the mud too. Now I really want to see how that Marquis plans to cover this up. Having figured it out, my steps quickened. Daisy, quickly send someone to invite Marquise Anne, my parents, and Dr. Winston. We cannot let anything happen to anyone when I arrive at the front courtyard. There I saw Sebastian holding Diana tightly. She was weeping in his arms. On the ground lay Tiffany and her brother Thomas Jung, soaking wet. The estate physician was hurriedly bandaging Cecilia's head. The servants were flustered, quickly using cloaks to cover Tiffany's body to protect her reputation. Lola Lu and Amber were also present. Lola Lu stared daggers at Diana in Sebastian's arms, her eyes looking as if they wanted to spew fire. Amber was crying and cursing at the same time. Master, who is that slut? Daring to seduce the master in broad daylight, doing such corrupt things. My madam has always been generous. If the master wanted to take a concubine, wouldn't marrying her properly be enough? But now, with this situation, If rumors get out, what face will my madam and the master have left? Let me tear that slut apart. Defiling the reputation of the Wen estate. Guests come to visit, yet one seduces the master, and one hits the master. And someone even smashed my young miss's head. If people know the truth, they'll say it was a misunderstanding. If they don't, they'll think the Marquis's household is bullying ours. Shut up. Sebastian gritted his teeth, forcing out the words. Hearing Amber screaming from afar, I chuckled softly. Truly someone I trained personally, her cursing is vicious and flawless. Sebastian is also quite interesting. The gentle and soft one lies flat on the ground ignored, while he holds tight to the one who just seduced him. Very well. Marquise Anne, this time you will have to pay a heavy price. I suppressed my smile, put on a worried look, and walked. Husband, what has happened here? Sebastian saw me, a look of shame and annoyance flashing across his face, before he spoke sternly. Wife, how do you manage the household? What kind of chaos is this? There are no rules left. I feigned ignorance. Master, were you not receiving guests? Where are the guests? Ah, mother, why are you out in the wind? Your body is weak, you cannot withstand the dampness. Someone, quickly take the old madam back to her room to rest. Sister-in-law, oh my, how did you get injured like that? Heavens, if that leaves a scar, you will lose your charm. A girl's face is the most important thing. Cecilia was poked in her sore spot and trembled with rage. She pushed me away. Don't fake kindness, I don't need your concern. Saying that, she covered her scarred face and ran back to her courtyard as if chased by a ghost, abandoning the old madam standing there. One arrow shot down two obstacles. I looked toward the two noble siblings still lying on the ground and spoke up. Servants, why have you not helped the guests up to change their clothes? What if they catch a cold? The veins on Sebastian's forehead bulged. The people weren't even awake yet, and she was talking about a cold, truly enough to leave an immortal speechless. The physician frantically saved them. The two had merely fallen into the lake and fainted from shock. Not long after, they gradually woke up, were helped by servants to change clothes, and drank ginger soup to warm up. Once the chaos in the front courtyard settled, my parents, Marquise Anne, and the Marchioness were all seated in the main hall. My father looked around and, not seeing the old madam, asked, "Where is my in-law?" Sebastian hurriedly replied, "Father-in-law, mother's health is still weak. It is not convenient for her to be out in the wind." Before he could finish, Tiffany jumped up, shouting loudly, "Sebastian, if your mother is truly weak, how did she have the strength to swing a cane and knock my brother into the lake?" She crawled to Marquise Anne's feet, crying out her grievance. "Father, we heard the old madam was ill, so my daughter, sister, and brother came to visit. Who would have guessed that Cecilia would push me into the water, and the old madam would push my brother? Father, you must seek justice for your children." The Marchioness looked around blankly, her gaze falling on me. "Mrs. Wen, what exactly is going on?" I looked up gently, my face innocent. "Marchioness, it is truly inconvenient for me to speak of this matter. Wet nurse, you tell them clearly for me." The wet nurse stepped forward and recounted the entire event from beginning to end, clearly and without omission or concealment. Hearing this, Marquise Anne was furious. He pointed straight at Sebastian's face and scolded him like pouring water. "You animal. You tricked one of my daughters and that wasn't enough, now you dare." He slammed the table with a bang, furiously preparing to rush forward and beat Sebastian. Actually, I really wanted him to beat him up to vent some anger. But this is my house. If I let a guest strike the master, where would the Lee family's reputation be? My mother, Victoria Lee, laughed softly, a laugh full of meaning. "Marquise, why do I find your words a bit unpleasant to hear? My son-in-law's appearance may be somewhat superior, but surely your marquisate wouldn't stuff two daughters into my son-in-law's harem in one breath. If this leaks out, people might think the noble Marquis's household doesn't know how to maintain dignity." As soon as she finished, the hall fell silent. Marquise glanced at my mother, a trace of contempt in his eyes. "Mrs. Lee, the daughter of my marquisate can only be a main wife. It is best you tell your daughter to pack up and leave early." Ah, the knife hidden in the sleeve is finally revealed. I smiled a smile that was not quite a smile and asked calmly, "I wonder which noble daughter the Marquise intends to marry to my husband, you, Marquis," and choked on his words. The Marchioness looked at her daughter with disappointment. "Diana, how could you do such a thing?" Diana suddenly exploded. "Father, mother, I am your only legitimate daughter. How could you bear to marry me to an old man with one foot in the grave?" Slap, Marquise and delivered a fiery slap to her face, scolding angrily, "Rebellious girl, shut your mouth. If you want to die, go find your own way to die, don't drag the whole family into the grave with you. Diana held her cheek, her face like ashes, her eyes lifeless, the light within them extinguished. I nodded and smiled lightly. So that is how it is. Miss Diana, your name is not right and your words are not proper. I fear it would be difficult to be a main wife. How about this? If you are willing, offer me tea. From now on, you will be a person of the Wen family. Diana did not glance at her parents even once. She took the teacup Daisy brought, and just as she knelt, she was kicked away by Marquise Anne, spitting fresh blood on the spot. Rebellious girl. If you have any shame left, go home and hang yourself. If you dare serve tea to that merchant's daughter, from this day forth, you are no longer my daughter. The Marchioness choked with sobs. Diana, you are confused. But Diana still raised the tea, slowly kneeling before me, and said in a loud voice, Diana pays respects to the mistress. I accepted the teacup, took a sip. Good girl. My hand gently removed a jade bracelet from my wrist and placed it on her hand. Diana fingered the bracelet, said nothing, and silently stood behind me. Marquis Anne was so angry he nearly suffocated. He slammed the table, stood up abruptly, and cursed Sebastian violently, causing Sebastian's face to turn purple, losing all his composure. I smiled faintly. Marquise, the second Miss Jung and the young master have both taken medicine prescribed by Dr. Winston. Their bodies are stable. You can take them back to the estate now. Marquise, do not be too angry. Although my house is not a dragon's pool or tiger's den, I guarantee that concubine Jung will be happy and safe here. As for the rituals and paperwork, my husband will handle them thoroughly. Marquis Anne, provoked to the point of losing all face and purple with rage, glared at Sebastian and gritted his teeth. You want to take my legitimate daughter as a concubine. 30,000 silver taels. Bring the silver to my state in 3 days, or else, official Wen. Just wait to be impeached. 30,000 taels. Why don't you just go rob someone? An angry female voice rang out. Old Madame Wen, I don't know when she arrived, was standing at the door of the main hall. Hearing the Marquis's words, her face turned green. Is your daughter made of gold or jade that she is so expensive? Take her home and keep her. My Wen estate cannot afford to feed such a high-priced lady. Mother, please say less. Sebastian bowed his head in shame and cried out. Sebastian's head was aching like it was being split by an axe. Since becoming an official, he had realized his mother had the petty, calculating heart of a small-town woman. In the past, being frugal could be excused by poverty, but now that they were wealthy, her character had not changed. At this very moment, was it really the time to argue over 30,000 taels? He frowned, bowing deeply. Marquis, I will personally deliver the silver to your estate in 3 days. However, right now Tiffany and Thomas are still weak. I hope the Marquis will take them back to rest. As for the medical expenses, I am willing to present them in full along with the 30,000 taels. Hearing this, Marquis Anne's expression softened, and he immediately led his people back to his estate in a huff. As soon as they left, my father's face darkened, and he questioned in a low voice, Genevieve, why did you make the Marquis lose so much face? Miss Diana is still the legitimate daughter of a Marquis, yet you made her serve tea to you in front of everyone. Are you not afraid the world will ridicule you? Before I could open my mouth, my mother swung her hand and slapped my father hard. Nathan, I have spoiled you too much, haven't I? People stand on your daughter's head to shit, and you rush to kneel and lick their feet. Look at the world, is there any father like you? My father was so furious smoke rose from his 7 orifices. He roared, Richard, you shrew with a foul mouth. A merchant's daughter truly has no manners. I sneered coldly. Father, you want to eat soft rice but act tough. Do not forget, among the 360 trades, every trade has its master. So what if mother is a merchant? She is the best in the business world. As for you, father, even though you are a scholar, you have never passed a single examination in your life. If not for mother, where would the wealth you enjoy today come from, letting you sit there preaching morals? Father, eating from the bowl, and then turning around to criticize the cook is not reasonable. To use the words of a scholar, isn't that betraying the world? So the world must not betray me. My father was so angry his hands trembled. He pointed at my face and raged. Unfilial daughter, devoid of morals. Is there any daughter who dares to argue with her father like you? My mother looked at him, her eyes devoid of any affection, leaving only disgust. Nathan, I know you have always despised me as a merchant woman, but I also despise a man like you. Richard, today I declare I want to divorce my husband. Take your bastard son and that mistress of yours and get the hell out of my house. Hearing this, my father knew my mother was not joking. He hurriedly flung his sleeves. Seeing this, Sebastian hurriedly stood up to soothe both sides. Father-in-law, mother-in-law, it is my fault. I apologize to you both. He bowed, then turned back to hold my hand, his tone sincere. My wife, I was wrong, I have made you tired. Please prepare the betrothal gifts for the Marquis's household. I will deliver them personally. I smiled kindly and replied softly. Husband, we are husband and wife, why stand on ceremony? What does one concubine matter? 10 or 8 rooms full of them is fine, as long as you are high-spirited, I will not complain. Sebastian was moved almost to tears. At this moment, old Madame Wen coldly interjected, that is the only value she has. My mother nearly flew into a rage hearing that. I quickly held her hand, my smile unchanged. Mother is right. You gave birth to such a good son. In the future, the ancestors of the Wen family will surely kowtow to thank you. Old Madame Wen opened her mouth to argue, but could find no words, so she stormed off in a huff. That old woman jumps around as soon as she recovers. Good. Later, let the whole family perish together. After arranging things for Diana, my father pulled his worthy son-in-law into the study for a discussion. My mother and I returned to my room to talk privately. My mother asked, have you found the person behind this? I nodded. It is the third prince. My mother smiled, a smile full of danger. Your father played a very big game. On the outside, he looks arrogant and easy to control, always speaking heartless words. But when I investigated, he turned out to be a strategist under Prince Cheng. I almost couldn't believe it. I widened my eyes. Prince Cheng, the one who nearly fought for the crown with the current emperor years ago. Rumor had it there was a peerless strategist by Prince Cheng's side, with wisdom surpassing others. After Prince Cheng was defeated, that man disappeared without a trace. That person was my father. My mother nodded, her eyes gloomy. Gold and silver move people's hearts. He coveted our family's assets. His hand has been chopped off countless times, yet he hasn't learned. After discovering your father's true identity, I sent people to investigate his entire past. She clenched her hands. Genevieve, guess what? It turns out Sebastian's mother was your father's childhood sweetheart. He was dirt poor, so she married a scholar named Wen who had some wealth. Later, the scholar died early, and the Wen family declined. 7 years ago, she was selling embroidery at a shop and met me and your father while we were inspecting it. I went to use the restroom, so I missed that dramatic reunion. And then, later, you met my worthy son-in-law at the bookstore. My mother's eyes burned with fire. They must be very proud, right? Using themselves as pawns to win against heaven and earth. On one hand, despising me as a merchant woman, on the other, spending the silver I worked so hard to earn. Eating from the bowl while dreaming of stealing the whole pot. Vile, lowly people. Truly shameless dogs that like to bite. I laughed and comforted my mother, then ordered a servant to invite Diana to meet us. As soon as Diana arrived, her eyes shone like stars, looking just like a hungry puppy wagging its tail in anticipation. Miss Jung, give me the item. I agree to your condition. Diana was overjoyed, nodding repeatedly. The item is hidden in the dog door in the back courtyard of the Marquis's estate. Madam just needs to send someone to get it. After the drama concluded, I immediately sent people to deliver 40,000 silver taels to the Marquis's estate, in exchange for 2 chests of Diana's dowry and a piece of paper. A contract. Immediately after, I went to the authorities to process the paperwork for taking a concubine, officially making Diana a concubine of Sebastian. Unexpectedly, she hugged her quilt and cried all afternoon, ending up falling ill. The physician came to take her pulse and said that concubine Jung's body was already weak and now required long-term recuperation. She could not serve her husband for the time being. Otherwise, if she became pregnant, it was feared both mother and child would die. Hearing this, Sebastian never set foot in her courtyard again. From then on, the days in the estate gradually became as calm as water. Sebastian also suddenly became much freer. Every day after leaving the government office, he would come to my courtyard to sit and talk, keeping me company morning and night. Laughter and voices echoed through the estate, and even old Madame Wen and Cecilia behaved much better. One day, while I was trimming flower branches, I suddenly felt the world spin, and my body collapsed to the ground. Sebastian was panicked, repeatedly calling for doctors. One after another they treated me, and everyone said the madam had no serious illness, only that her body was weak and she should take more tonics. From then on, tonic medicine flowed in like water, but my body wasted away day by day, and my periods of coma grew longer. Sebastian was anxious and personally went to invite Dr. Winston to take my pulse. unexpectedly, after hearing the diagnosis that medicine was useless. He was so angry he smashed a teacup and cursed, "Dr. Winston, you are a fraud. How can you say my wife is so critically ill?" Not believing it, he went to court to beg the emperor for a special favor, to allow an imperial physician to examine me. The result from the imperial physician of the Chen family was identical to Dr. Winston's. Right on the jade steps of the palace hall, he fell to his knees and wailed, "Please save my wife. Even if I must exchange my entire family fortune, I will not regret it." The imperial physician was moved to tears. Leaving the estate, he sighed that such deep love and righteousness, as official Wens, was truly rare in this world. The story of the Wen family's deep affection spread throughout the capital. The maidens of noble houses all swore that if they were to marry, they must marry someone like official Wen. Because of this, at the end of the year, when the Ministry of Personnel reviewed his performance, Sebastian was rated as excellent. He was just waiting for the opportunity to be promoted to the 5th rank, with a chance to be sent as a prefectural vice magistrate in the provinces. And I was supposed to die. That day, my body suddenly felt unusually strong, my complexion rosy, my spirit lifted. I smiled brightly and said, "I am hungry. I want to eat rice." Sebastian suppressed his grief and personally brought a bowl of fragrant stewed chicken soup, spoon, feeding me one mouthful at a time. Just as I opened my mouth, before the soup touched my lips, my head dropped, and I fell into a deep coma. At that exact moment, my mother arrived with several noble ladies to visit. Seeing this, she immediately invited Dr. Winston. As soon as he entered, the divine doctor smelled the chicken soup and his face changed drastically. "There is poison in the soup." Sebastian's face turned red with rage, and he shouted, "Slander! This soup was stewed by Cecilia herself for my wife, how could there be poison?" To prove it, he lifted the entire bowl of soup and drank it all in one breath. Less than a quarter of an hour later, he spat out a mouthful of thick black blood. His body crashed to the ground, his eyes staring wide in shock. He twitched a few times, then stopped breathing. Amidst the terrified screams echoing through the estate, my mother immediately sent people to report to the authorities. The Dali Temple investigated thoroughly and concluded that Cecilia, resentful after being disfigured by smallpox, had been putting wilted rose powder in my tonic soup every day, causing me to wither away. However, my constitution was strong from years of good nourishment, and after 2 months of drinking it, I still hadn't died. Impatient, she added arsenic to the chicken soup, never expecting her own brother to drink it by mistake and lose his life on the spot. The result: Cecilia used poison to murder her sister-in-law and killed her own brother. She was imprisoned and sentenced to beheading. Old Madame Wynne suffered too great a shock and went mad. Lola Lu, the person the old Madame trusted most, was assigned to care for her diligently. No one knows what happened that night, but both of them fell into the lotus pond in the back courtyard and drowned. The next morning, their pale, bloated bodies floated up and were discovered. Carrying a heart full of grief, I buried Sebastian and his mother together. The items burned for him, aside from paper money and gold ingots, included aphrodisiac powder and several sets of the Romantic Scholar beauty manuscripts that Sebastian had once painstakingly collected for me. He did not know that I did not only read women's manuscripts, I also studied the history books and strategies of men, never leaving them from my hand. Who told me to read such miscellaneous books? So before I do anything, I must always weigh it. If it harms ours and does not benefit me, I do not do it. If it harms me and benefits others, I do not do it. If it harms others to benefit me, I consider it. If it benefits me and benefits others, I seize the chance to do it. It is just a pity that Sebastian, like my father, was arrogant to the bone, believing himself nobler than others. Not only did he despise merchant women, but he also looked down on the women of the world. In the end, he died because of the very women he despised. If he has consciousness in the underworld, I wonder if he would be angry enough to come back to life. After Sebastian passed away, my father, in a drunken stupor, picked a fight with people from the third prince's estate and was accidentally beaten to death. My mother, having just donated 500,000 silver taels on behalf of the crown prince to make winter clothes for the soldiers on the front lines, without a word, beat the drum at the court gates and submitted a petition to the emperor. Upon investigation, the crown prince presented evidence that the third prince was forming factions for private gain and secretly contacting the remnants of Prince Cheng. The emperor hated Prince Cheng to the bone. Years ago in the fight for the throne, he nearly lost the empire. Now hearing his own trusted son was colluding with rebels, He flew into a dragon's rage. Once the investigation began, it was discovered that the Marquisans' household had long been in the same boat as the third prince. Not only that estate, but countless officials in the court were also implicated. The Son of Heaven was furious, and blood stained the ground for 100 miles. The third prince was granted death by poisonous wine. More than half the court was purged. Marquis Anne was beheaded, and his family was exiled thousands of miles away. Even if they lived, they could never return to the capital. On the day the Jung family was escorted out of the capital, Diana did not go to see them off. She only sat quietly in her room sewing all day. When she finished 2 brocade quilts, she took them to the lake and burned them as a farewell. My body, thanks to Dr. Winston's care, gradually recovered. 1 year later, my 2 children returned from studying with the great Confucian scholar. Knowing the family had undergone changes, they did not grieve for too long and quickly pulled themselves together to continue their studies. Having seen the sea of suffering in life and witnessed separation and death, now everything seemed ordinary to them. When my health fully recovered, I continued to manage the ledgers and calculate silver. After all, throwing out that much silver, if I didn't earn it back quickly, it would be a great pity. 1 year later, I drafted a letter releasing the concubine and prepared a generous dowry to marry Diana to the young guard she secretly loved. I heard that on their wedding night. When the groom discovered she was still a virgin, he was so stunned he froze like a rock. My mother and I ate sunflower seeds while listening to Amber recount the story from beginning to end. Hearing the end, she secretly covered a smile. "Milady, this servant has a cousin." I immediately understood. "All right, I will prepare a dowry for you too. Looking at you, you are thirsty to be married off." Amber was as happy as if she had won a prize, kneeling down and knocking her head on the floor until her forehead was red. On the day the bridal sedan chair left the estate, she secretly let out a breath. Only then did she realize that the young miss she had always thought was an innocent white rabbit was actually a deeply scheming fox. There are things her stupid mind cannot understand, so keeping her mouth shut and living a peaceful life is the best way, isn't it? 3 years later, the Crown Prince presented a prescription to cure smallpox completely, saving countless commoners before the epidemic could spread. The Crown Prince's reputation resounded throughout the human world, praised by all. The emperor, old and weak, abdicated, and the Crown Prince successfully ascended the throne, becoming the new emperor. The new monarch took the throne, and celebrations were held everywhere. My mother and I looked at each other and smiled softly. The Lee family, for the next 20 years, would surely be as solid as a rock. Grandfather and grandmother held the 2 children, listening to them tell stories about their school, their laughter never ceasing. My mother and I reclined on our chairs, leisurely drinking our daily tonic. Daisy and Holly sat by the corridor basking in the sun, turning the pages of books one by one in a courtyard full of literature. Time was quiet, the scenery was peaceful. It happened to be the most beautiful moment. True strength is not always loud, often, it is the quiet wisdom to endure, and the courage to protect oneself. Genevieve's journey reminds us that a woman's value is defined not by who she marries, but by her resilience and intelligence. When faced with betrayal, she chose self-love over despair, turning adversity into armor. Her story teaches us that by guarding our hearts with wisdom and mastering our own destiny, we can bloom brilliantly, even after the harshest winter. The story ends here for now. If it touched your heart or left you thinking, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments.